So I want to talk about an unbelievable milestone which ICP just achieved recently. Now, I'll also talk about other updates that I've noticed that has been going on when it comes to this as of late. But I first want to clarify, nothing I say is financial advice. I'm not telling anyone to do anything, and this is just personally my perspective. So did you know that it was recently reported, according to ChainSpect, that ICP crossed 282 billion transactions processed on chain. So that right there is over a quarter of a trillion. Wow. That's really impressive, right? Keep in mind, in a billion, that's 1,000 million. That's really impressive. So we're taking a look at, again, it didn't just reach 282 million transactions. No, it just recently surpassed 282 billion transactions processed on chain. I think that's pretty monumental. I think that showcases adoption to a certain extent. And I think it also showcases that, people are still using it, right? Or not, how could we see something like that, right? That's just kind of my mindset. Not to mention as well, there's another update that I've noticed when it comes to ICP and how it is actually a post in regard to BSCN, or should I say BSC News. Basically, they kind of said how activity kind of surged as transaction costs plummeted. Now, what do they mean by this, right? They say when it comes to ICP's average fee, right? Transaction fee, basically, they say it has fallen to a new 90-day low of around, catch this, right? There's going to be a lot of zeros, $0.0000465. What the? Yeah. But yeah, besides that point, it basically just made things a little bit more, I guess, affordable, I suppose. But in which case, who was complaining about the transaction fees when it comes to ICP before? I wasn't. That's just the thing. I mean, it's not like it was $1,000 or something. No way, right? It wasn't like that before. But yeah, besides that point, in terms of the average, right? I'm just saying. So yeah, it's kind of like, okay, cool. I think that was a pretty okay milestone. But also, let's just take a look at this as well. At the same time, it says how ICP processed more than 335 million transactions on May 8th, right? On the 8th of May, basically. So it's pretty impressive as well seeing that. Now, again, seeing the transaction fee when it comes to ICP falling to a new 90-day low recently, yeah, that one is not really such an impressive update, but the other ones are, I think, in my opinion. That slight decrease, I suppose, in the transaction fee in terms of the average of it, it's kind of like, that Spider-Man meme where he's pointing at another Spider-Man and the other Spider-Man's pointing at another one. It's just kind of like that, It's kind of like, okay, cool, I guess. It's like seeing, let's say, something in the grocery store have a discount from like 82% to 81%. Okay, sure, I guess. I'm not going to complain, but I wouldn't say it's the best either. That's just kind of the analogy that I have. Of course, it's a little bit different in this case, but I'm just saying. That's just what I've noticed so far. So, as of late, when it comes to ICP, I've seen some slight, I guess, milestones, right? Some slight improvements here and there. And ICP as of right now, still around $3.50, which people like to say, well, it's so boring. Well, did anyone watch my videos back then when ICP was around $2? I'm sure some still, because I still see, some of the people back then who commented on ICP and they're still kind of commenting as of right now. So yeah, thank you so much for being with me throughout the journey so far, even though we're not even 2 times higher than $2. We're still below $4, but still, it was very tough. Some people would arguably like to say to talk about ICP at around $2. But I didn't find it like as something so draining for me personally, because I still always believed in the fundamentals. Now, the activity when it comes to it wasn't that good at that time. Like, not a lot of people were talking about it, but I felt like, you know what? As long as I like the fundamentals, I don't see any reason for me to just give up like that if the charts weren't doing the best, because I thought that, you know what? Bear markets in some cases and also market downturns, sometimes they do pass. It's not like sometimes a permanent thing, right? But sometimes a project being bad fundamentally, that's sometimes a little bit more permanent. So if I'm waiting for something that is not permanent, then I don't mind. It's like, for instance, if I'm waiting for something that's good fundamentally, and all I'm waiting for is the market sentiment to change, then I don't mind waiting, right? It's like I don't mind waiting for something that I find is good, I'm not telling anyone to do anything, and I'm not saying that in this case. However, this is just kind of the analogy that I have. You know, it's like, for instance, saving up for a home. I think it's awesome, actually. You know, I don't mind waiting for that. That's the thing. That's just kind of the way I take a look at it. The thing is, Dfinity, its team, right? They can't determine what happens to the market sentiment overall. You know what I mean? Like, they can't demand Bitcoin to do this or that. They can't demand the altcoin space to do this or that. They can't do that. First of all, there's tens of thousands of projects within this space, and there's just more being created all the time. At least it feels like to me. So they can't control all that, first of all, right? And second of all, Bitcoin's really massive. They can't control that either. It's not like Dominic Williams can control the narrative when it comes to the global markets. There's no way he could do that, you know? And of course, Dominic Williams is the founder of Dfinity. So when I take that into consideration, okay, you know, the market sentiment changing, it's going to depend on a lot of different factors. But as long as I like the fundamentals of the project, then I don't mind. That's the thing. I don't mind waiting for something that I think is awesome in some cases. It's like, for instance, if I'm waiting for a Jeep Wrangler, you know, to arrive, that's awesome, right? I love it. I think it's really cool. Or should I say the Jeep Gladiator, which I think is the coolest Jeep of all time, by the way. But besides that, but if I'm waiting for, like, let's say, a car that broke down 65 times or whatever, it's like, what am I doing? You know, I don't even want to wait for that. But I don't mind waiting for a Jeep Gladiator. That's just my perspective. So when it comes to ICP, I kind of view it a little bit for me like a Jeep Gladiator. That's just my mindset, even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything. However, when I take a look at it as well, people like to tell me that, wow, you know, ICP, the recovery has been not that good. Well, is almost 50% in the past week considered not that good? If that's not considered good, then I don't know what is actually personally for me. In which case, I mean, sure, if we take a look at where ICP once was in 2025 and 2024, yeah, the pullback has been pretty extensive, but at the same time, when I take a look at, let's say, this recovery, right? Considering the altcoin space hasn't necessarily done the best, and also considering how Bitcoin is still at around 80 grand, I have zero complaints when it comes to what I've seen so far. And I feel like maybe, you know, this is just kind of the beginning chapters, right? Because Bitcoin is still at around 80 grand. We haven't seen Bitcoin in quite a while reach 90 grand, 100 grand, 110 grand, and so on, right? We haven't seen that for quite a while. We haven't seen Bitcoin reach a new all-time high or even just let alone stabilize at around 100 grand. So when it comes to ICP, it's already doing this type of stuff right now. What would it do if, let's say, Bitcoin did a lot better? That's what I'm a little bit curious about, because back in 2024, I saw ICP reach almost $19. Granted, we're still well over 4 times lower than that, but in the grand scheme of things, like, almost $19 wasn't considered like such a all-time best when it comes to ICP either. So yeah, that's just kind of my mindset. It kind of showcases just how low ICP has been for quite a while, actually, in the grand scheme of things. Because keep in mind, you know, months ago, we saw ICP reach a new all-time low. Could you imagine that? Reaching a new all-time low. So basically, it's the lowest it's ever been in history at that point, in which case it was around $1.98, right? That was around 7 months ago, basically. Could you imagine that? The all-time low that we saw when it comes to ICP throughout its whole history of its existence was around 7 months ago. So you could imagine, right? When I was talking about ICP around 7 months ago, the sentiment was not good whatsoever. So seeing it's kind of small but decent progress so far, I have zero complaints as of now. We'll wait and see what happens though, but I'll of course be sure to make more updates moving forward. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a very nice day. I'm out. Peace. Bye.